Hi everybody, welcome back. Wanted to do another Zodiac video and give a thanks to everybody that watched the last one. It did really well. Appreciate everyone that gave me a like on that. Wanted to do another one. It's going to be analyzing the video. His name was Arthur Lee Allen, which of course that video started it all for me. It led to me writing a book about this case. But want to give a quick shout out to YouTuber Rick Hansen for finding something really interesting. Rick's channel has some Zodiac stuff on it and analyzes some of the ciphers and things called Caesar shifts. I don't really understand all that much that well. I never really got into the ciphers, but a lot of people that have suspects that can find their suspect's name in it really always hold that out as evidence their guy could be the Zodiac or whatnot. But interestingly enough, Rick found my name in the Zodiac's 408 cipher. And my name's really not that common, but it's all linked together here, and I'll show you real quick. Here it is. Drewebeeson. I think that the rule has to be that it all connects together, and that would have been just in this middle part here. Of course, the Zodiac sent this cipher the first time in three parts to three different newspapers on August 1st, 1969. So my name would be found in the section sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. But isn't that ironic? And I was born July 26, 1969, so I wasn't alive during Lake Herman Road or Blue Rock Springs Park attack that happened on July 4th, 1969. So, and I'm not a junior. I'm definitely not the Zodiac. So just to find a name like mine that's not that common. I'm not Andrew. My name's spelled Bee, not Beason. It's really not that common. There's probably only 18 Drew Beesons outright in the country that I know of. That's just an actual Drew. What are the odds that my name's found in the 408? So good find, Rick. That's really funny, and you can even see it better here. Of course, this is just laid out where I could highlight the letters. You could see, this is the transcription that came from Donald Gene Hardin and his wife Betty. The first one, it said, "I like killing people because it's so much fun, better than killing animals, wild game in the forest," the whole thing. And you can see it here, Drewebeeson. It just goes to show you could find almost anything in these ciphers. So you have guys like Gary Stewart saying he found his father's name, Earl Van Best Jr., in the cipher. Of course, they found the word Gyke for Richard Gykowski in there because he shortened his name, even though he never used that particular spelling, Gyke, was in there. Here it is. Here's how they found Gyke, Gyke, and then some people also point out that the Cuwosk, kind of spells his last name, the rest of his last name, which is Gykowski. I think all that stuff is nonsense, and it just kind of proves it when you can find my name in the Zodiac's 408. So I just thought that was a real interesting deal. So kudos to you, Rick, for finding that, because I would not take credit. I would love to take credit for that, but I don't know what made you even think of it, but that's pretty funny. So anyway, I wanted to get to the main part of the show, which is analyzing the video that started it all for me. His name was Arthur Lee Allen. This is hosted by Tom Voigt and another guy that goes by Pedro Bo Sox, obviously a Boston Red Sox fan. But anyway, both of those host it, and I think this one, here's where Tom's is. But I want to play parts of it, and then I'll talk about it. This part, obviously, that's Don Cheney, of course, my main person of interest. But this part's going to start off with author Robert Graysmith. Obviously, he wrote the book Zodiac and Zodiac Unmasked. But he's going to start talking about how Detective Toschi told him about how the suspect will often interject himself into a case and try to help law enforcement out. So I thought that was real interesting. So let's play that part real quick.
Toschi told me these stories about Arthur Lee Allen, and as you know, the way that came about, I was visiting Toschi, and I said, I'd read this book on criminology, and they said, you know what, the guy who really did it will often try to help the police. And said, Dave, you've got 2,500 suspects. Did one of them ever try to help you, write you a letter? And Toschi says, yeah, I just got it, and it's from prison, and it's from Arthur Lee Allen. He says, I'm sorry I wasn't your man. I wish I could help. And I go, wow, that's certainly promising. Well, eventually, Toschi starts talking about this trip to the oil refinery where he'd met Allen. And this had all been initiated by a man named Don Cheney, who was one of Allen's roommates, who was an engineer who'd been in the area and left just before the series of murders had started.
Let's stop it there. So you see, the interesting part is you said out of 2,500 suspects, who came forward to offer assistance in the case? And Toschi said this guy named Arthur Leigh Allen, who wrote a letter when Allen was in prison at the Tascadero State Hospital, mental hospital, but they also called it a prison. So out of 2,500 suspects, there's only one, which is Arthur Leigh Allen. Well, who else interjected themselves in this case? They just waited a little while to do it. You guessed it, Don Cheney. So let's play a little more and see where it goes.
1969, when we had this conversation, and I never saw him again after that. The first thing we talked about, when I arrived there, he showed me the watch. He'd received it Christmas, and it was in the box with the card, and everything was there. And he asked me what I thought of it. Was it a good watch?
Okay, I want to stop it right there. You heard what Don Cheney said. He said he went over to visit Arthur Leigh Allen on January 1st, 1969. Of course, that's New Year's Day. And he said the first thing that he did when he got over there was Arthur Leigh Allen showed him the Zodiac model wristwatch that Arthur Leigh Allen got for Christmas. Well, we know in hindsight that that's not true. Arthur Leigh Allen received that watch the prior year for Christmas 1967. So Don's a year off here. He changed his story at some time to make it fit better. If you watch the Fincher movie Zodiac, you'll hear them say the date, New Year's Day 1968, not 1969. So even sometime after that, Don changed the year. Why did he do that? Because it better fit events. You even heard Graysmith speak prior to this that Don Cheney moved before the murders transpired. Well, that's not entirely true. Don does claim that he left the Bay Area after sometime pretty soon after that New Year's Day 69. Well, we know that the murder at Lake Herman Road had already taken place on December 20th, 1968. So that statement wasn't even correct. But with the watch, we know Arthur Leigh Allen's younger brother Ron got an identical watch that same Christmas of 1967. So you can already see here that Don is just making this up as he goes. But I truly believe that the Zodiac name was chosen from Arthur Leigh Allen's wristwatch. Let's keep watching.
The Zodiac watch, and it had that little symbol on the face. He'd been fired from Valley Springs, and I know that he really sent a lot of resumes to get that job, and he liked it over there. And he got fired, and it looked like he wasn't going to teach anymore. I was concerned about what he was going to do, and I went over there to kind of pep him up and talk to him about career choices and that sort of thing, and started asking him what he was going to do. And through some conversation, we got up to a point where he was talking about being a professional criminal. He didn't need a good resume for that. He could do it anyway. He said he would give himself an identity and write letters to the editors, and he'd have a name, and it would be Zodiac. I told him I thought, well, you could have a better name than that, and he wasn't buying any of that. He was going to be Zodiac. So we got in the car, and he drove me up to Blue Rock Springs Country Club, and we drove through the parking lot. We talked earlier when he talked about setting up this random killing situation. He said he knew some places where they parked, and he drove by there and showed me that place. And then after we passed through there, we went back around to Lake Herman Road and came in past that site. And we stopped there, and Leigh seemed to want to linger there and look at the place, and he described what he would like to do to some girl at that place. It wasn't pretty. When I was sitting there at that spot, he kind of kept slipping from future tense into past tense on some of what he was saying to me there. And I began to think maybe this is something that was already history.
Let's stop it right there again. So you notice that he is talking about still New Year's Day 1969, And his friend Arthur Lee Allen takes him through Blue Rock Springs, which is another contradiction I pointed out before, that when Tom Voigt interviewed Don Cheney in 2003, Tom Voigt asked him about Blue Rock Springs Park, and Don's response was something like, "I've never heard of Blue Rock Springs Park." But here he is telling this vivid story of his friend driving him through there to to show him sites where to murder couples. You also notice that when he begins talking about coming back up through the Lake Herman Road site, that he pivots, and he has to pivot really quick in his mind because he knows that he's talking about New Year's Day 69 now, and I think he's smart enough that he catches his mistake. And the mistake is that the Lake Herman Road murders had already happened before that day. Of course, they happened December 20th, 1968, 12 days before the time that Don's talking about. And I think he catches this because he is the killer. He knows he made a mistake, and he covers for it by saying that Leigh started to linger there, and then he started talking in the past tense, and I started to think what he was telling me was already history, because here's the scene right here where the body was laid out just 12 days earlier, and Arthur Lee Allen's going to drive him to that site where this had just happened. I mean, you probably would have still seen something either roped off or where this happened. There's really one turnaround on Lake Herman Road, and as Robert Graysmith even points out in this video, that it's pitch dark there at night. And I don't know if this might have happened in the afternoon or not when Don is telling the story, but you can tell it's full of holes. But he catches himself knowing that this has already happened, so he's got to come up with a reason. And the reason is Arthur Lee Allen takes him there, and then he starts slipping into the past tense, so he can cover for the story because he remembers this has already happened. But think about that. Is Arthur Lee Allen really going to take him over there 12 days later? He's already showing him sites where he's going to murder people. Well, gee, why wouldn't he just tell him, "Hey, I killed some people here 12 days earlier, Don, what do you think?" And, Don thinking maybe this might have already happened. Why does Don wait till the summer of 1971, which from this date is 2.5 years later, to come forward to the police? Surely Don heard, being in the area still at that time, he was still living in the area on that very New Year's Day of 69. He didn't hear that a couple was murdered there 12 days earlier. And doesn't come to the police till the summer of 71. It's highly, highly suspect. Here's the next part I want to watch real quick, and this is going to be Detective Bauer talking about some of his suspicions of Don Cheney.
I wonder sometimes if he's not more involved in the case than he wants to let on.
Leigh had a ball of paraffin to squeeze, and I had been squeezing it earlier, but then I rolled it and polished it so that there were no fingerprints left on it. And he wanted a fingerprint, so I put my thumb on it and pressed it down, my right thumb, and then I left.
When I went to Washington to interview him, the interview just something, a sixth sense or whatever it may be, didn't feel right. So I asked Cheney if he'd take a polygraph, and we went to the Washington State Police and they in Tacoma, and we're going to run a polygraph. But he drank too much the night before. He knew he was scheduled for this, and came in terribly hungover, couldn't take it, then took it later, came back inconclusive. Things like that I didn't really care for. And then now I understand lately he's come out and said that since the information has come out regarding San Francisco Police Department trying to get DNA off stamps that might have been licked by the Zodiac, Cheney's come out and made mention that he and Arthur were doing something, and Arthur had him licking his stamps.
After I came in, he showed me the watch, and he was in the process of writing thank you notes and stuffing them in envelopes and that, and he had a box of stationery items on the table that was handy. He says, "Why don't you stamp some of those envelopes for me?" So I did that.
So basically, Don does whatever Arthur Lee Allen tells him. Put your thumb in that paraffin wax. Lick my stamps for me. I mean, it's just plainly obvious Don's worried about his DNA showing up because that's the first time he ever told anyone that he licked his stamps. And just like Detective Bauert says in the video, first polygraph was canceled because Don got so hungover the next day knowing this test was scheduled. And when they took it a second time, it was inconclusive. That tells you quite a bit. Now, Arthur Lee Allen was given a polygraph at a Atascadero hospital when he was there, and he passed it, a long one. He did pass it. It could have been because he was on tranquilizers, or maybe he was a sociopath, and that might have helped him. It's not that easy to pass a polygraph given by a good polygraph expert on good equipment. That's a fact. Anyone can look that up. So maybe Allen had something to do with it, but remember, the only person that ever failed, inconclusive means you failed. I mean, Don Cheney's the only person that ever, one, got out of a polygraph with the Zodiac case, two, to ever fail one. So just things to keep in mind about that. And I'll do a part 2 to this pretty soon because there's some other really interesting stuff in it. Thanks for watching.